Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is your essential intelligence briefing.
And today we're focusing on some highly dynamic, really critical developments across the Western Hemisphere.
Our focus is that intense 2-week period from November 19th right through to December 2nd, 2025.
Our mission here is clear. We're synthesizing hundreds of different sources, drawing from data in, well, over 20 languages.
And the goal is to deliver an impartial, structured assessment of this rapid escalation.
We'll be looking specifically at the sovereignty disputes, the unprecedented military deployments, and that intensifying U.S. anti-narcotics campaign. It's really reshaping the entire region.
We aren't just giving you raw headlines. This is processed, strategic intelligence. It's designed to give you clarity when things are this complex.
But first, a brief message.
This deep dive is brought to you by ProWave AI. They use next-generation machine learning to predict market shifts with, frankly, unprecedented accuracy.
ProWave AI. See tomorrow today.
And we are proud to declare that this comprehensive briefing is powered by Stylo News.
That's the AI-powered news application that makes global intelligence immediately actionable for you, the listener.
So let us begin. Let's start by identifying the central pattern that really defined these last 2 weeks.
What we're seeing is a very distinct, I would say, aggressive shift in U.S. national policy.
Right. The anti-narcotics campaign has moved beyond just sanctions and diplomatic pressure.
Sharply away from it, now we're seeing overt military activity in the Caribbean.
And it's explicitly targeting Venezuelan assets.
While at the same time issuing these very powerful, non-negotiable threats toward both Mexico and Colombia.
The defining characteristic of all this really is the speed, isn't it? The sheer acceleration.
It's almost a daily escalation if you track the timeline. You go back to, what, November 14th and 15th?
That's the deployment of the USS Gerald R. Ford.
The entire aircraft carrier strike group. It moved into the Caribbean Sea, positioning near Venezuela, and that immediately signaled a kinetic strategy, not a diplomatic one.
And this military posturing was then very quickly followed by rhetoric.
Exactly. Political rhetoric designed to prepare the American public for a potential intervention.
So on November 17th and 18th,
President Trump went public, stated his readiness to authorize military strikes inside both Mexico and Colombia.
to combat drug trafficking. I mean, that is a huge deviation from decades of U.S. policy.
It absolutely is. It escalates counter-narcotics to direct cross-border military action.
And then the legal framework was put in place to authorize these aggressive options.
Yes, very quickly. Between November 24th and 25th, the U.S. formally designated Venezuela's Cartel de los Soles
Which they claim is led by President Maduro himself.
as a foreign terrorist organization, an FTO, and that designation is crucial.
Because it does more than just sanctions.
So much more. It gives the U.S. military and intelligence a vastly expanded legal authority to target people, to target assets, all under counterterrorism laws. It can justify lethal force.
And that FTO designation, it laid the groundwork for what came next.
On November 28th, President Trump announced an imminent shift.
From just maritime patrols to land-based ground operations.
Yeah.
Inside Venezuelan territory.
And that culminated in the dramatic declaration on November 29th.
When the U.S. declared Venezuelan airspace completely closed.
If you look at the scale of this, the carrier group, an estimated 15,000 troops. This isn't just a regional presence.
No, this is the largest U.S. military buildup in the Western Hemisphere
Since the 1989 Panama invasion. And for a comparable geopolitical flashpoint, you'd probably have to look all the way back to the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962.
That comparison, drawing a line from now back to the Cuban Missile Crisis, it really suggests the stakes are profoundly high.
They are.
So with that density of troops and hardware, what evidence do we have about how this is all manifesting on the ground, away from Washington or Caracas?
Well, the local and regional impacts are immediate.
Yeah.
And they are profoundly destabilizing. Let's start with Mexico.
Where the U.S. rhetoric has triggered massive internal unrest.
Huge unrest. Following the recent assassination of Mayor Carlos Manzo, you had these widespread protests erupt.
Primarily driven by younger citizens, right? Generation Z activists.
That's right. They surrounded the presidential palace, demanding real, effective action against the cartels.
And those protests, they quickly evolved beyond just being about the cartels.
They did. They pivoted very quickly to allegations of high-level corruption, even collusion, targeting President Claudia Sheinbaum directly.
The argument being that the government's failure suggests some kind of complicity.
Exactly. And that domestic turmoil makes her diplomatic position against the U.S., well, infinitely more difficult.
And in Venezuela, meanwhile, the internal security posture seems to be in overdrive.
Absolutely. President Maduro has visibly increased security, and he's relying heavily on Cuban security forces to ensure loyalty.
The military is at maximum alertness.
And the government has reinforced its civilian defense structure. We're hearing that millions have joined the government militias. It's a clear signal of defensive preparation.
And the external pressure is causing real disruption.
Severe logistical disruption. The U.S. declaration caused at least 6 major international carriers
Big ones like Iberia and Turkish Airlines
to suspend all operations into Caracas. The country is being rapidly isolated.
Beyond the immediate confrontation, the sources also highlight this backdrop of judicial crises across the region.
Yes, and these events underline the foundational political instability. I mean, former Peruvian President Pedro Castillo was just sentenced to 11 years for conspiracy to rebellion.
And in Brazil, former President Bolsonaro is facing more legal trouble.
Preventive detention, linked to documented attempts to destroy evidence, it just heightens the political polarization in the region's largest economy.
And as security forces are focused on these military threats, there's a humanitarian consequence.
Precisely. We've observed a significant migration surge. As security priorities shifted, border control was reportedly reduced.
So migrants from Venezuela, Colombia, Ecuador.
A large influx. Exploiting that reduced security at the Per-Chile border, it's creating immediate humanitarian challenges.
Now, there's a detail here that it really speaks to the unsettling duality of life in Latin America right now.
You mean the Miss Universe pageant?
Yes. On November 20th, while the U.S. carrier group was deployed, Fatima Bosch of Mexico won the title.
It creates this extraordinary juxtaposition, this massive cultural celebration happening at the same time as an imminent threat of conflict.
It makes you ask, is culture just a distraction, or is life just that resilient?
It speaks to the persistence of civilian life, I think.
So, shifting to the national and geopolitical implications, how is the U.S. action being framed at home?
Domestically, it's presented as a crucial national security necessity to stem drug deaths.
I saw Senator McCormick cited a figure.
Over 100,000 U.S. overdose deaths in 2023, a staggering number. He compared it to the total U.S. casualties from the entire Vietnam War.
That comparison, while effective rhetorically, it does point toward the risk of repeating historical patterns.
That concern is very prominent in the sources. The critique suggests the drug war is perhaps a political veneer.
For interventionism.
Historically, regime change efforts in the region, especially those linked to resources or countering rivals, were often justified under an anti-drug or anti-communist crusade.
And internationally, the pushback on the legality of all this seems significant.
It is. The actions clearly violate norms of sovereignty and international law. The UN has expressed grave concern over the over 20 U.S. anti-drug strikes since September,
Citing extrajudicial killings.
and unacceptable civilian casualties. On top of that, key European allies, the UK, France, the Netherlands, they've actually restricted intelligence sharing with the U.S.
Because of concerns over the legality of the Caribbean operations.
Exactly.
Let's turn now to the decision makers themselves. We have 3 primary actors here with very polarized perspectives.
On the U.S. side, you have President Donald Trump. His perspective is defined by this aggressive stance against what he calls narco-terrorism.
The stated goal is drug interdiction.
Right. But critics argue that's secondary. They claim the real motivation is strategic, controlling Venezuela's oil reserves and countering Chinese and Russian influence.
And in Caracas, what's President Maduro's perspective?
His is one of absolute denial and, well, high resistance. He condemns the U.S. deployments as imperialist aggression, as psychological warfare.
He insists the cartel designation is a complete fabrication.
A pretext for regime change and resource theft. We've also seen reports that he rejected an ultimatum to resign.
Demanding immunity and control over the military.
Yes.
And moving north, Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum has a perspective focused entirely on sovereignty.
Her rejection of any U.S. ground operations is firm, non-negotiable. She explicitly cites historical grievances.
The 19th century U.S.-Mexico War.
The profound national trauma from that. She's drawn a clear, red line. No foreign troops on Mexican soil.
Which puts her in direct diplomatic opposition to President Trump's stated goals.
Now, one of the most critical elements here, the justification for all of this, is the Cartel de los Soles itself, and its very existence is contested.
That is the pivotal question. The U.S. government and opposition leader Maria Corina Machado, they assert it's a criminal political entity,
Led by Maduro and high-ranking military officials.
and that this cartel uses the state's resources ports, the National Guard, to facilitate massive cocaine trafficking.
So the argument is that the state is the cartel.
Precisely. That's the official U.S. position. But critics fiercely challenge this.
Like Colombian President Gustavo Petro.
He dismisses its existence entirely, calls it a fabrication by right-wing forces to destabilize governments, and you have international legal experts, former diplomats,
All expressing deep skepticism.
suggesting the evidence provided by the U.S. might be thin or politically motivated.
Given these entrenched positions, what are the immediate courses of action our sources suggest are possible?
They outline 3 immediate paths. The first, option 1, is military action and escalation. So the U.S. initiates ground operations, continues the airspace closure.
And potentially launches airstrikes against strategic Venezuelan infrastructure.
Option 2 would be the opposite, sovereignty defense and resistance.
Under that option, Venezuela maintains its maximum military alert. It seeks diplomatic and material help from allies like Russia and China. Mexico continues its strong diplomatic resistance.
And finally, option 3 offers a political solution.
Negotiation and de-escalation. This is based on unconfirmed reports of back-channel talks.
The proposal being a gradual exit for Maduro in exchange for easing military pressure.
And the UN and EU continue to be crucial here, calling for peaceful dialogue.
If we look at the source sentiment, we can see where the support for these options lies.
Yes, support for option 1, the military intervention, is heavily concentrated in U.S. conservative media and Venezuelan opposition social media.
And conversely, support for option 2, sovereignty.
Overwhelmingly dominant in Venezuelan and Mexican nationalistic sentiment. It's also strongly amplified by Russian and Chinese state media. They frame the U.S. actions as hegemonic overreach.
Yet, despite that polarization, there seems to be some common ground.
There is a broad, stabilizing common ground. International organizations, neighboring governments. They generally share a cautious sentiment.
Their main concern is avoiding an escalation that could destabilize the whole region.
The common viewpoint is a demand for adherence to international law, a return to diplomacy.
So looking ahead, what specific developments should you, the listener, be monitoring in the coming days?
The most immediate unknown is the execution and scope of those announced U.S. ground operations in Venezuela. Where, when, and how that kinetic phase begins.
We also need to watch the Venezuelan government's definitive public response to the airspace closure, and especially the involvement of Cuban personnel.
And on the diplomatic front, keep a close watch on Peru's formal proposal to the OAS, the Organization of American States.
Scheduled for December 3rd or 4th.
It aims to reform asylum laws after their dispute with Mexico, and that could shift regional dynamics at a very critical time.
So what's our concluding strategic assessment?
Well, the U.S. strategy appears designed to force a political domino effect across the Caribbean and Latin America. It's an attempt to reshape the political landscape and reassert U.S. dominance.
And this aggressive posture risks transforming an anti-narcotics effort
Into a major proxy conflict involving global powers.
And for a final provocative thought for you to consider, that coexistence, that unsettling duality we mentioned.
The Miss Universe pageant against the backdrop of a deployed carrier group.
Yes. Is the appearance of normalcy a deliberate, high-level distraction from the gravity of the situation? Or is the inherent resilience of daily life just continuing, unaffected by the turmoil swirling just overhead?
That brings us to the conclusion of this deep dive.
Now, this detailed intelligence briefing was generated using the technology of Stylo News. To give you some insight into how this works.
Stylo News is built for rapid, customized intelligence. It synthesizes hundreds of sources, traditional news, social media, forums.
It uses advanced AI to rapidly distill all that data into concise, custom intelligence briefs tailored to your focus in under a minute.
So if your goal is to gain knowledge quickly, thoroughly, and without information overload, Stylo News is really the tool you need.
You can download Stylo News on your mobile device or your desktop computer and get immediate access to these customizable, AI-powered news briefs on demand.
We'd recommend checking out the Executive Monthly Plan. It's just $19.99 a month, and you can start today with a 7-day free trial.
Just visit www.stylonews.com to subscribe and access your personalized global intelligence feed.
Thank you so much for joining us for this essential deep dive into the tensions currently defining the Western Hemisphere.
And we encourage you to send us your requests for future deep dives. Also, be sure to follow Stylo News on your favorite social media platforms. We'll be here, ready when the next critical event breaks. Good day.